Welcome back. We're going to be looking at part 3, the final part of the Etude number 29 in the key of E major. Let's get started. Etude number 29 is only 28 measures long, but boy, what a difficult 28 measures, including a cadenza, some unusual figures, and goes up to high E. So it's a very difficult etude that has to be practiced well in advance. The final part of this etude is measures 20 through 28. Let's look at it in detail today and let's listen to it. Before we dive into the technical aspects of it, let's review the E major scale. It is a somewhat difficult scale for two reasons. Number one, it involves D sharp and E in the middle of the staff, where we have to go from the right little finger to the left little finger and then back down, reverse. In the upper register, there's high C sharp and high D sharp as well. Very unusual notes to tune, very tricky for finger patterns. There's one difficult altissimo note in this passage, E6, the high E. Let's take a look at the fingers involved. Half hole 2 and 3 of the left hand, the octave key in the back. If you have a third octave key, you may choose to use it. It does sharpen the pitch, however. Second and third fingers of the right hand. I find it necessary to use only the A flat key. Older instructors are used to playing it with both the A flat and E flat keys, but that sharpens the pitch considerably. It's awkward, not really necessary. First octave key and A flat work for most players. There are 3 unusual items in this ending section. Let's look at the trills first. You'll notice on the music given to you on the screen, I put 2X. That's a reminder for me. Use 2 trills. Let's hear one trill and see what that would be like. As you can see, one trill is not really enough. It doesn't sound like a trill, it sounds like a turn, a decoration. So let's try 3 trills. And that sounds a little bit rushed, especially at the tempo I'm using, which is 76 today. If you were to play it in the 80s, it would be very, very frantic sounding. 2 trills is a good middle speed for a legato etude. Now let's look at the second trill, which is also going to be played the same way 2 times. Now let's go back to the first trill and talk about finger patterns. We have E, F sharp, E, F sharp, E, D sharp, E. At a fast speed, it will not be necessary for you to go up and down the half hole. You can just leave everything right where it is. See what I mean? I can move the finger and play it. I can not move the finger and play it. Now let's take a look at the next trill, F sharp to G sharp. Now that, on a student oboe, would be a difficult trill because we would have to play this on a student model oboe. And there's all kinds of issues with timing of the fingers. If you have even a mid-range oboe, it's going to have a little flange that sticks up over the middle of the instrument. That keeps you from having to switch fingers. I can keep the G sharp key down during that trill. Watch. F sharp key trill, keep the G sharp key pressed, and then I can keep the G sharp key down through everything, grace notes and everything. Now let's look at the final turn at the end. It's very, very awkward, very awkward. The 5 notes literally are B, C sharp B, A sharp B. Now slowly, that's no big deal, but it's not slow. We're going to have to fit in all 5 notes in a half beat. So it really cannot be done with the standard fingering. I'm going to try it now just for fun. Okay, so you can see what's going to happen. Instead, let's use the trill key. The trill key, you have 2 trill keys on the left side of the oboe's upper joint. We're going to use the finger for B, and we're going to use our ring finger to play the C sharp trill, which is the lower of those 2 little trill keys. And when you go very, very fast, you don't hear any tonal or tuning issues. And then you have a sharp written on the bottom of it, which is kind of unusual. It tells you how to do the decoration. It literally means the bottom note of the turn has to be raised. So again, the notes are B, C sharp trill fingering, B, A sharp, not in the key signature, but that's the decoration. And then B again. So we've got to fit in B, C sharp B, A sharp B, and a half beat. And believe me, I played that many, many times before we did the demo recording. Now, before we get into the actual playing and technical aspects, let's review the counting. It's 4 beats in a bar. Let's look at the first semi-phrase. Starts on count 4. 4, 1, 2, a 3, 4, 1, 3. That's the first semi-phrase. Now let's pick it up on count 4 with the trill. Trill and a 1, 3, trill and a 1. And do take the breath because you'll need it. You'll be a little bit tired after the entire etude. Going on the next semi-phrase. And 3 and 4 and 1, 2, a 3, 4, a 1. Now the final concluding semi-phrase. 2 and 4 and 1, decoration 4, a 1, 3. You see how fast the decoration has to take place, right? It's going to all take place within a half beat, all 5 notes. All right, let's look at an articulation issue unique to this etude, the so-called bogus staccato. I think a lot of students will play staccato notes here, literally short, which will not sound musical. Let's take a look at a place like that. The middle of the line, starting on A, we're under the crescendo. Just doesn't sound quite musical. Instead, think light and just a little bit separated. So I refer to this as a bogus staccato because in 21st century terms, we're used to thinking staccato means short. But this was not written in the 21st century. This was written in the first half of the 1800s. The staccatos here are orchestral type staccatos, which will mean slightly separated, not as short as we can play. So you're ready to begin your practice session. Start with a good warm-up. Long tones, the E major scale, and perhaps drill for some of the Now you're ready to begin your practice. Let's start with some more lead-in time for you. Now you're ready to begin your practice session. Let's start with long tones, a review of the E major scale, and a drill maybe of some of the more difficult sections. I can tell you every day before I practiced the entire etude, I went over that difficult turn at the end and the cadenza. And I'm sure you've already identified the weak places, the difficult places for which you need drill every day. Now let's look at the specific technique for measure 21, the trill with the 2 grace notes at the end. Let's begin by just playing them slowly. A 7-note figure. Again, it's not really any reason to move the left hand at all. It goes by very quickly. And then the idea is to fit all of that into one beat. Now you're going to do the same thing later. Now we'll practice the same thing with measure 22 trill. F sharp, G sharp, and if you have even a medium level oboe, you should be able to hold the G sharp key down and trill only moving the index finger. Practice without, then with the metronome until you can fit all 7 notes in one beat, tonguing the next measure's G sharp on the beat. Decoration, tongue. Okay, sorry about that. Let's see what that was, 26, C sharp, okay. Now let's look at measure 26, the high note of the composition. We've got C sharp. Fortunately, we have a breath before it that allows us to switch fingers over to the left side. We must use the left high E here because the next note is C sharp again on the right side. So you'll practice first going from C sharp to E to C sharp. Notice the sequence. You can break between the first note and the second note, but then you must slur. Once you're comfortable with those three notes, then you can put the rhythm in with it. And finally, the most difficult technical measure as far as fitting things into the counts. Measure 27, the next to the last measure. You have the first note is 2.5 counts, 1 and 2 and 3 and. So let's do that with the metronome alone. You'll notice you cannot do the decoration until you play the B natural on time. Now let's try playing the entire measure with no decoration. 1 and 3, a 1. Now let's try playing the same measure again, except playing B, C sharp trill and back. And then gradually add the other two notes of the turn. The idea being always start the decoration on the and of beat 3. 1 and 2 and 3, decoration 4, a 1. Practice in a sequential way, in a way that is a good method for you, always with a metronome. To retard at the end or not to retard, that is the question. It will depend on your personal taste and the advice of your private teacher. I'd like to put a small retard at the end, and that's the key word, small. We don't want to overdo it or it will sound kind of Hollywood. And also, the listeners behind the screen at the all-region audition, they will not be able to tell exactly where your pulse is. That's their number one concern with your technique. Is there a feeling of pulse that's consistent? So like 1, 2, 3. That's a little retard at the end, which is very tasteful. Your private teacher may suggest no retard, which is also okay. In the demo, I did not use one. It's easy to create shapes in this final section. You'll notice the final line is basically one long crescendo. And I've marked it that way into music to remind myself. The high E really is the loudest note of the phrase. Please notice also that entire measure, you'll see I have an arrow with a circle around it. That entire measure is forte. And the next note is forte. Only once you create that note should you begin your diminuendo. Don't feel like you have to do a huge diminuendo. The diminuendo really continues all the way to the end, not necessarily the last note. Advanced teachers with experience will tell you crescendos and etudes, decrescendos, usually occur beyond what's written in the music. Let's talk about basics, tone quality. Before you practice the rhythms, start with a good sound. Fit that good sound into the technique. Always think about tone quality with a long tone and then go over the technical aspects from short sections to long. We've taken quite a journey together. We've looked at this etude in 3 broad sections. You're going to be working throughout the fall. Almost every region does their auditions in December. If I can help you out in any way, please contact me at the email or phone number that I put on the screen. Good luck to you in your practice and preparation for the all-region auditions. Remember, practice every day. Get help anytime you need it and practice in front of others. You won't be quite as nervous at the audition. Everybody's going to be nervous a little bit. The more you practice in front of others and play in front of others, the less you will feel nervous. Take care and good luck.